The soft strains of a classical piece, a melancholic cello concerto, filtered through the solid oak door. It was Arthur's favorite, the one my late husband used to play on quiet evenings. But tonight, the familiar melody brought no warmth to my heart. Instead, it carved a sharp line through the silence of the room that had become my prison. I sat motionless on the old wicker chair, my gaze fixed on the world outside my window. The dazzling lights of the main house blazed against the dark canvas of the night garden. The faint sounds of laughter and clinking glasses drifted over, signals of the lavish, joyful party unfolding within. Joy, a feeling for which there was no room for me. This was the guest house, once a welcoming space for our most honored friends. Now it was my private cell. Madison, my daughter-in-law, had made it so. She had locked me in here, as if I were a shameful secret to be hidden away from the prying eyes of her important guests. She would be standing in the grand hall right now, greeting people with that perfectly practiced smile, playing the role of the new lady of the house with flawless precision. And Ethan, my son, where was he in that perfect picture? He would be standing by her side, of course, nodding and smiling politely. Perhaps in some deep recess of his heart, he would think of his mother, locked away and alone. Or perhaps he had truly forgotten. My heart constricted, but no tears came. The long, slow burn of pain had evaporated them all. My eyes drifted from the bright spectacle outside and settled on a dark corner of the room. There a large antique cedar chest sat in silent judgment. It was the last of Arthur's possessions I had insisted on keeping with me. Madison probably thought it was just a cumbersome, worthless piece of old furniture. She believed that locking me in this room was her final victory. She was smiling at my supposed frailty, my forgetfulness. But she never knew, she never once suspected that she had locked me in with my greatest weapon. The weapon that would reclaim everything that was mine. I rose slowly, my joints protesting, and walked towards the chest. The thin layer of dust on its lid did not cloud my memory. I placed my hand on the cool, smooth wood. There was no rage in my chest, only a cold, profound calm. The night was still young. And the performance was only just beginning. 3 months earlier. The morning sun glinted off the surface of the rose garden's fountain, scattering diamonds of light across the manicured lawn. I was sipping my Earl Grey tea in the sunroom, my favorite spot for over 30 years. The sweet fragrance of the climbing roses Arthur had planted for me drifted in on the breeze, a scent that always brought me peace. Everything in this house was a memory of Arthur and me. We designed it together, chose every piece of furniture, every swatch of fabric. We built it with love, a sanctuary for our family. Mrs. Vance, would you care for another scone? Maria, our housekeeper who had been with us since Ethan was a boy, asked softly. I shook my head and smiled at her. No, thank you, Maria. That was lovely. This quiet tranquility was my life. But since Ethan had married Madison the year before, that peace was being steadily eroded by a relentless undercurrent. Eleanor, darling, sitting out here all by yourself again. You'll catch a chill. Madison's bright, sharp voice preceded her into the sunroom. She swept in wearing a modern, form-fitting dress, her expensive perfume overwhelming the delicate scent of the roses. I've told you a dozen times, if you want to sit out here, have Maria call me. I'll keep you company. She smiled, a brilliant flash of white teeth, but it never reached her eyes. I'm quite used to it, dear. I've been sitting here for 3 decades. Nothing's happened yet, I replied, my voice even. Oh, Eleanor, things are different now. The air quality, the pollution, she said it while her eyes flicked over my simple cashmere cardigan. I knew that in her eyes I was like the antique furniture in the house. A valuable relic, but one that clashed with the sleek modern aesthetic she was so desperate to create. A moment later Ethan joined us. My son, always handsome in his tailored suit, looked a little tired around the eyes. Well, look at this. My 2 favorite ladies, he said, kissing my cheek warmly. Off to work, dear? I asked, patting his arm. Big meeting this morning, Mom. A major potential investor. Then you must have something to eat first. Maria has fresh scones and fruit. Oh, that won't be necessary, Eleanor, Madison interjected smoothly. We'll grab something near Ethan's office. There's a fabulous new brunch spot I've been dying to try. She looped her arm through her husband's, all charm and affection. I've already made a reservation, darling. Ethan looked momentarily torn. his gaze shifting between me and his wife. Are you sure, Maddie? Mom went to the trouble. Don't be silly, Ethan. It's no trouble. Besides, this way Eleanor can rest. We don't want to bother Maria, do we? Her smile was sweet, but her words were like invisible scissors, snipping away at the threads connecting me to my son's life. I sighed softly. Go on, Ethan. Your work is important. We can have a meal together another time. I didn't want to be the cause of his stress. Ethan nodded, relieved. Thanks, Mom. I'll be home for dinner tonight, I promise. Drive safely, dear. The two of them left, leaving me alone with Maria once more. Mrs. Vance Madison is very proactive, isn't she? Maria remarked, her tone carefully neutral. I managed a faint smile. I knew what she meant. Madison's proactiveness was overwhelming, suffocating. She was trying to take control of everything in this house, from the daily menus to the landscaping. And it seemed her next project was me. That day was the quiet beginning. That afternoon I couldn't find the small silver key to the jewelry safe in my dressing room. I distinctly remembered leaving it on my bedside table. Now it was gone. Maria and I searched for nearly an hour. Where could it have gone? I never put it anywhere else. I murmured, more to myself than to her. Maria looked worried. Should I call Mr. Ethan? No. Let him work. I'll try to retrace my steps. That evening, when Ethan arrived home, Madison rushed to him, her face a mask of panic. Ethan, thank God you're here. It's terrible. Your mother lost the key to the safe. Her voice was pitched to make a small issue sound like a catastrophe. Maria and I have looked everywhere. I'm so worried about her, Ethan. She seemed so confused. I had just walked out of the library and heard every word. I'm not confused, Madison. I simply misplaced it. Madison turned to me, her expression one of deep sympathy. Of course, Eleanor. Don't you worry about a thing. But her eyes told a different story. They were accusing me. I'll call a locksmith first thing in the morning to change the locks. Just for security. Ethan looked at me with concern. Mom, are you sure you didn't put it somewhere unusual? I'm sure, I said firmly. But lately you have been forgetting things more often. My son's words were a cold shock to my system. I looked at him, and in his eyes, I saw a flicker of belief in Madison's narrative. Aha! I found it! Madison exclaimed dramatically. She walked over to a vase of flowers on the console table and pulled out the small silver key. Here it is, Eleanor. You must have put it in here when you were arranging the flowers. She smiled, relieved, and handed the key to me. See? I told you there was nothing to worry about. I took the key, my hand trembling slightly. There was no joy in its return. I was sure 100% certain that I had not put it in that vase. I glanced at my daughter-in-law. She was smiling lovingly at Ethan. What a relief, darling. I was so worried. Ethan let out a long breath and came to hug me. You need to be more careful, Mom. You had me worried. I could only nod, my throat tight. How could I explain that this wasn't my mistake? How could I tell him that I was being deliberately framed as a forgetful old woman in the eyes of my own family? My words would have no weight, not when Madison had so skillfully produced evidence of my supposed senility. I couldn't sleep that night. The sound of Madison's and Ethan's soft laughter from their bedroom across the hall, a sound that once brought me comfort, now made me feel utterly alone. I understood Madison's game now. She wasn't trying to drive me out of the house with open hostility. No, her method was far more insidious. She would slowly, methodically destroy my credibility. She would paint me as a nuisance, a confused old woman in the eyes of my son, until the day he would willingly agree with any decision she made about me, including the decision to move me to a place of her choosing. This pattern repeated itself over the next few weeks. My reading glasses disappeared from my desk and reappeared in the refrigerator. My favorite novel, left open on the sofa, was found stuffed under a cushion. Each time, Madison would be the one to accidentally find the misplaced item. And each time, she would reinforce the narrative to Ethan that my condition was becoming more concerning. Ethan, darling, your mother put the TV remote in a potted plant today. Ethan, I saw her talking to herself in the garden this morning. Ethan, I think we should talk to a doctor about her memory. Her words were like water dripping on a stone. Though Ethan tried to defend me at first, she probably just absent-minded, Maddie. She's getting older. The constant repetition began to wear him down. The stone began to erode. His faith in me began to waver. I tried to speak to him alone. Ethan, it's not me, son. I know what I'm doing. My mind is clear. But his eyes were filled with a mixture of pity and confusion. I know, Mom. I believe you. But you should get more rest. Don't overthink things. He spoke to me as one would speak to a small child. I knew then that I had lost the first round. My words no longer held any weight. I was now the patient in need of care. And the caregiver was Madison, the very person who had orchestrated the entire illness. The turning point came one afternoon when Madison invited her high society friends for a charity luncheon at the house. I had no desire to attend, but it would have been rude to refuse. I went downstairs to greet the guests as was my duty. As they chattered about fashion and summer trips to Europe, Madison suddenly spoke up, her voice clear and carrying across the room. Oh, I almost forgot to show you all my mother-in-law's incredible jewelry collection. The Vance sapphires are legendary. She turned to me with a brilliant smile. Eleanor, would you mind? Just a little peek for my friends. A knot of dread formed in my stomach. Oh, let's not, dear. They're just old things. Nothing special. Nonsense. Beautiful things are meant to be admired. Before I could protest further, she stood up. I'll go open the safe myself. You just relax, Eleanor. Her friends murmured in excitement. I sat frozen, helpless. I knew the key to the safe was on my main keyring, which I kept in my bedside drawer. Madison returned in less than 5 minutes, holding several velvet boxes. But her face was pale, her expression one of utter shock. Maddie, what is it? One of her friends asked. Madison's eyes, wide and glistening with unshed tears, found mine across the room. Eleanor, the main necklace, the sapphire your grandmother-in-law received from the Queen, where is it? Her question hung in the sudden silence. The light, cheerful atmosphere of the luncheon instantly became heavy and oppressive. Every eye in the room turned to me. I was the defendant in the court of her making. Her friends began to whisper, exchanging nervous glances. It's gone, another friend asked, her voice high-pitched. Yes, just gone. From the safe. The box is empty, Madison said, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek, making her look tragically wronged. She turned back to me, her voice trembling with manufactured pain and confusion. Eleanor, have you seen it? Did you perhaps move it somewhere else? My heart plummeted. How could I have moved it? It's always been in the safe. My voice shook as I fought to control my emotions. This was no longer just about me being forgetful. This was an accusation of theft of my own family's heirlooms. But it's gone, Eleanor. Madison insisted, her voice rising. There are only a few of us who ever go into your room, and the key has been with you the entire time. The implication was clear, hanging poisonously in the air. Are you suggesting I took it, Madison? I asked, my voice dangerously low as my patience finally snapped. Yes. Or if you didn't take it, you might have given it away or lost it and you don't even remember. She accused me outright. Your memory, it's been getting so much worse lately. A gasp went through her circle of friends. Some looked at me with pity, others with contempt. My face burned with shame and rage. I rose to my feet, my body trembling. That's enough, Madison. Stop these lies. I'm not lying. It's the truth. She sobbed, turning to her friends for support. You see? She's in denial. She's completely confused. At that precise moment, Ethan walked in, drawn by the commotion. What's going on? Why is everyone shouting? Madison ran to him, collapsing against his chest in a storm of sobs. Ethan, it's gone. The Vance sapphire necklace, it's gone. She recounted her version of events, a masterpiece of manipulation that painted me as a senile old woman who had likely stolen her own jewelry in a fit of dementia. Ethan looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. It was no longer confusion. It was disappointment. Mom, what is this all about? Ethan, listen to me. I didn't do it, I pleaded. Madison is setting me up. She wants to make me look bad in front of you. Eleanor, how could you say such a thing? Madison shrieked. I was only ever worried about you. Why would you accuse me like this? She buried her face in Ethan's chest, crying pitifully. My son held his wife, comforting her. He looked at me over her shoulder as if I were a stranger. "That's enough, Mom," he said, his voice flat and cold, each word a knife in my heart. "You're making a scene. The guests are all watching. Please just go upstairs and rest." His words were a polite dismissal. I stood frozen, the pain a physical chokehold in my throat. I looked around the room and saw only judging eyes. Not one person, not even my own son, was willing to believe me. I turned and walked out of the room, my steps heavy, as if I were dragging chains. The whispers followed me, as did the sound of Ethan comforting Madison. I didn't go to my bedroom. I walked straight out the back, across the lawn, to the empty guest house at the edge of the property. I needed to escape everyone, to escape this cruel new reality. The luncheon ended in a cloud of scandal, and the story of my alarming condition would spread like wildfire through Madison's social circle. It was exactly what she wanted. She had won. That evening, Ethan came to find me in the guest house. He didn't come to apologize. He came with a proposal that shattered my world completely. "Mom, Maddie and I have been talking," he began, his voice trying its best to be gentle. "We think for your own comfort, and for everyone's safety." He paused, swallowing hard before continuing. "We think it would be for the best if you stayed here in the guest house for a while." I looked up at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. "What did you say, Ethan?" "It's quieter here, Mom. You'll be able to rest without any disturbances," he reasoned. "And Maddie is going to hire a private nurse to be with you 24/7, to make sure you have everything you need." A private nurse. His words meant nothing less than a private guard. This was my home, the one I had built with my own hands. And now my son was exiling me from it, to a small separate building. All because of the lies of one woman. "Is this your idea or Madison's?" I asked, my voice a hoarse whisper. Ethan avoided my eyes. We both agree, Mom. You agree that your mother is so mentally unstable she needs to be locked away?" The tears I thought had run dry began to well up again. "It's not like that, Mom. I'm doing this because I'm worried about you," he insisted, but I felt none of his concern. All I felt was the chilling finality of abandonment. "If you were truly worried, you would trust me," I said. "You would believe that I am not forgetful, that I did not take that necklace." Ethan was silent for a long time. His face was a war of conflicting emotions. I could see the love he had for me, but it was obscured by exhaustion and the heavy influence of his wife. In the end, he chose the path of least resistance. "Just try staying here for a while, Mom. Please," he pleaded, cutting the conversation short. "Once things have settled down, I promise, I'll have you move back to the main house." The promise was empty. I knew that once I stepped fully into this new role, I would never be allowed to leave it. Not as long as Madison was here. "And the necklace, do you really think I took it?" I asked one last question. Ethan sighed heavily. "I don't think that, Mom, but it is missing. Maybe you just forgot where you put it. When you're feeling better, you'll remember." He still believed her version. He still saw me as a sick, confused woman. My fight was pointless. I nodded slowly, exhausted and utterly defeated. "Fine. If this is what you want, I'll stay." Relief washed over Ethan's face. "Thank you for understanding, Mom." He came to hug me, but it felt like embracing a stranger. The warmth I once felt in my son's arms was gone, replaced by an invisible, chilling distance. The next day, the move began. Madison, of course, supervised everything herself. She had the staff move only a few of my personal belongings to the guest house. A few changes of clothes, a couple of books, some basic toiletries. As if I were a temporary guest, soon to depart. But there was one thing I insisted on bringing with me. The old cedar chest that had belonged to Arthur. "Eleanor, why do you want that huge, musty old thing?" "It's so cumbersome," Madison complained. "It was important to your father-in-law." "I'm keeping it with me," I stated flatly. Madison made a face but didn't argue. She probably thought it was worthless. That was for the best. The day I walked out of the main house and into the guest house, Maria cried. "Mrs. Vance, how could Mr. Ethan do this to you?" she whispered as she helped me with a small bag. I just patted her hand. "It's all right, Maria. I'll be fine." My eyes sent her a signal, a silent plea for an ally. She was the only one I could trust now. Life in the guest house began. It was quiet, devastatingly quiet. My days passed in a slow, monotonous blur. The private nurse, a stern-faced woman named Nurse Jacobs, shadowed my every move. She had been hired by Madison and followed her orders to the letter, taking notes on my behavior, reporting my every word and action. I was a prisoner under 24-hour surveillance. Madison would visit daily, armed with her false smile and concerned questions. "Did you eat well today, Eleanor? Is your headache any better? Did you have any bad dreams last night?" Each question was a hammer blow, reinforcing my status as the patient. She would gleefully tell me about her plans for the main house, how she was redesigning the gardens in a French style, how she was repainting the living room a modern gray. Everything she did was an attempt to erase my presence, and Arthur's, from the home that was now, effectively, her kingdom. I tried to talk to Ethan when he came by after work, but our conversations were always stilted. "Ethan, I missed the house." "This is our house too, Mom," he would reply evasively. "I mean the main house, my bedroom. The garden I tended." "Just be patient, Mom. We need to let things settle." He spoke as if it were all beyond his control. I knew he felt guilty, but his guilt wasn't strong enough to make him defy his wife. He had traded his mother's well-being for a false peace in his marriage. That truth hurt more than the imprisonment itself. Maria was my only link to the outside world. She would sneak me my favorite shortbread cookies when Nurse Jacobs wasn't looking and whisper news from the main house. "Mrs. Madison had the gardeners dig up your rose bushes today. Yesterday, she had them take down Mr. Arthur's portrait in the study. She said it was too old-fashioned." Each piece of news was another small cut to my heart. I buried the pain, presenting a facade of calm acceptance. I knew that any outburst would only play into Madison's hands, cementing my image as a crazy old woman. So I chose silence. And I waited. Nearly 2 months passed. I grew accustomed to my confinement. I spent most of my time reading and writing in a journal, documenting every feeling, every memory, every injustice. It was the only way I could feel like I still existed. Then one day Maria brought me a crucial piece of news. "Mrs. Vance, Mr. Ethan and Mrs. Madison are planning a huge party at the house," she whispered, her voice laced with worry. "They're inviting a very important investor. It's a very big deal." I put down my pen. "An investor?" "Yes. Mr. Ethan seems very excited about it. He said it's a deal that will decide the future of his company." My heart began to beat faster. I knew my son. He was incredibly dedicated to his work, and this project must mean the world to him, which meant he would do anything to ensure its success, even if it meant keeping his mother conveniently hidden away. "And Madison?" I asked. "What about her?" Maria sighed. "Mrs. Madison is more than excited. She's ordered a new gown, caterers from the city, florist. She told the staff this party will be her official debut as the matriarch of the Vance estate." The words were a declaration of war. This wasn't just a business party for Ethan. It was Madison's coronation. And on the stage she was building for herself, there would be no place for me. My premonition came true a few days later. One evening, just before the party, Madison came to the guest house with Ethan in tow. Her smile was sweeter than ever. "Eleanor, darling, the big party for Ethan's company is in 2 days," she began, sitting beside me and taking my hand in hers. A completely false gesture. "I know. Maria told me," I said coolly. "Good. Then I wanted to talk to you." She glanced at Ethan, who stood silently behind her. "Ethan and I are so concerned about your health. The party will be very crowded, noisy and chaotic. It might be overwhelming and confusing for you." I looked directly into her eyes. "And so I was thinking to ensure you get a full night of peaceful rest," she smiled thinly. "On the night of the party, we'd like you to just stay here and relax. No need to tire yourself out greeting guests." She paused, delivering the final devastating blow. "And just for security, to prevent any strangers from wandering over here, I'm going to have the door locked from the outside." Her words hung in the air. The world stopped. This was no longer a request. It was a decree. She was going to imprison me officially on the night of her greatest triumph. In my own home. I turned to Ethan, searching his face for any sign of protest. All I saw were averted eyes and silent resignation. He said nothing. His silence was his consent. The patience I had cultivated for months shattered. "You're actually going to lock me in here?" I shouted, my voice raw with fury. It was the first time I had shown any open anger. Madison feigned shock, taking a step back. "Eleanor, please don't misunderstand. We're only doing this because we care." She turned on the tears again, looking to Ethan for support. "Ethan, look at her, she's having another one of her emotional outbursts." "I am not having an outburst. What you are doing is monstrous." I rose to my feet, confronting my son. "Ethan, look at me. Do you really agree with this? Are you going to let your wife lock up your own mother like an animal?" Ethan's face was a canvas of pain. "Mom, please calm down." He tried to touch me, but I swatted his hand away. "Don't touch me. Answer me." He stammered. I don't want any trouble on the night of the party. This deal, it's so important to me, Mom. If anything goes wrong, everything I've worked for could be ruined." His answer was a confession. He was willing to sacrifice his mother's dignity for his own success. My heart broke into 1,000 pieces. The tears finally came, hot and unrestrained. Not tears of sorrow, but of the deepest, most profound disappointment. "Fine," I said, my voice cracking as I collapsed back into the chair, utterly spent. "If that's your choice, so be it. Lock me in." Madison looked at me with the unmistakable glint of victory in her eyes. She had achieved her goal. She had completely neutralized me. She went to comfort Ethan, who stood pale and shaken. "It's okay, darling. She'll calm down. She's just not feeling well." They left, abandoning me to the darkness and despair. I sat there for a long time, unmoving, until Nurse Jacobs came to remind me to take my medication. I ignored her. My eyes were fixed on the main house, once my sanctuary. And in that moment of absolute darkness, my gaze fell upon the old cedar chest in the corner of the room. The chest Madison had dismissed as old and in the way. Suddenly a memory surfaced, a flash of light in the storm. A memory of a specific vital document, one that Arthur had told me he'd put in the safest place possible. My withered heart began to beat again, a frantic, hopeful rhythm. The overwhelming despair began to recede, replaced by a glimmer of possibility. I stood up and walked to the chest. The dust on its lid was no longer a sign of neglect, but a cloak of invisibility. I knew what I had to do. Madison thought she was controlling the game, but she had no idea that the very cage she'd built for me was about to become the stage for my ultimate vindication. After that night of shattered confrontation, the atmosphere in the guest house shifted. The quiet became tense, charged. Nurse Jacobs watched me more carefully, likely on specific orders from Madison. As for me, I showed no more anger, no more resistance. I reverted to the placid old woman, eating my meals, taking my medication, or so they thought, and spending my hours reading quietly. My compliance pleased Madison. She believed I had finally surrendered to my fate. But inside, a storm was gathering. Every night, after Nurse Jacobs was asleep, I would slip silently from my bed. I would go to the old cedar chest in the corner. The small brass key to its lock was my secret, sewn into the hem of my nightgown, the one personal item Madison had never thought to inspect. I would turn the key, the soft click barely audible, and lift the heavy lid. The faint, musty scent of old paper and cedarwood would rise to greet meth scent of memory, of dormant power. The chest was filled with Arthur's personal effects. Old journals, his favorite fountain pen, medals, and awards. I sifted through them carefully, my heart pounding. I remembered Arthur's last words to me on the subject. "Eleanor, the most important document for this house, I've put it in the safest place of all." At the time, I assumed he meant the main safe in our bedroom. Only now did I understand. The safest place was the most unexpected one. The place so ordinary that everyone would overlook it. And then my fingers brushed against it. A stiff, leather portfolio hidden beneath a false bottom in the chest. A secret compartment so cleverly made it was nearly invisible. I pulled it out, my hands trembling. On the cover, in Arthur's familiar, strong handwriting, were 2 words. "For Eleanor." I opened the portfolio. What I found inside made my breath catch in my throat. It was the original official deed to the entire Vance estate. The sprawling 10 acres of prime Greenwich land. and the name of the sole proprietor listed on that document was mine, and mine alone, Eleanor Vance. Tears of pure, unadulterated relief streamed down my face. This was Arthur's final gift to me. He must have foreseen a day like this, a day when I might be vulnerable. He hadn't transferred the property to Ethan directly. He had quietly placed all the power, the final unbreakable defense, into my hands. The helplessness that had gripped my soul for months vanished, replaced by a steely resolve. I was not alone. I was not destitute. I was the owner of this house, the true owner. Madison could control my movements, my meals, my medication, but she could not control this fact. I placed the deed carefully back in its hiding place. That night I slept soundly for the first time in months. In my dreams I saw Arthur standing at the foot of my bed smiling. He said nothing, but his eyes conveyed everything. Fight for it, Eleanor. The next day, I began to quietly orchestrate my counterattack. My first objective was to contact the outside world without Madison's knowledge. I needed to reach Mr. Peterson, our loyal family lawyer. He was the only one who knew the intricacies of Arthur's affairs, and the one man I could trust implicitly. My chance came sooner than I expected. That afternoon, Maria snuck in with a small plate of my favorite shortbread while Nurse Jacobs was in the restroom. "Mrs. Vance, I have such a bad feeling. The party is tomorrow," Maria fretted. "Mrs. Madison had the gardeners remove your favorite wicker chairs from the sunroom. She said they didn't fit the event aesthetic." I clenched my fists under the blanket, but my face remained calm. "Maria, listen to me very carefully," I said, my voice low and urgent. "I need you to do something for me. It's very important." Maria's eyes widened. "Anything, Mrs. Vance. Anything at all. I need you to contact Mr. Peterson, the lawyer. Immediately." I tore a page from my journal, scribbled his number and a short message. "Tell him I have an urgent matter. Tell him I need him to come to the house on the night of the party, as my special guest." Maria took the small, folded note and tucked it into her apron pocket. "Yes, Mrs. Vance. I'll call him right away. Be careful, Maria. Don't let anyone see you." "I won't." She nodded firmly and hurried out, leaving me to wait, my nerves stretched taut. This was a critical gamble. If Madison found out, my plan would be over before it began. The hours crawled by. Every footstep outside my door made my heart leap. Late in the afternoon, Maria returned, pretending to collect my lunch tray. As she passed by, she feigned a stumble, dropping a spoon. And as she bent to retrieve it, she whispered, "It's done, Mrs. Vance. The lawyer will be there." I nodded, a wave of relief washing over me. The first step of my plan was a success. Now all I had to do was wait, and prepare for the most important night of my life. The day of the party arrived. The entire estate was a hive of activity. Trucks came and went, florists and caterers shouted instructions, their voices a chaotic symphony I observed from my window, as if watching a play unfold. A play directed by and starring Madison. In the afternoon, Madison stopped by, wrapped in a silk robe, her hair and makeup already perfect. She looked like a queen ready for her coronation. "Eleanor, darling, you're looking bright today," she said, her eyes scanning me for any sign of trouble. "You just rest tonight. Don't worry about a thing. I've ordered a special dinner for you, and Nurse Jacobs will take excellent care of you." "Thank you, dear," I replied evenly, betraying nothing. "You have a wonderful party." Madison laughed lightly. "Oh, I will, Eleanor. This is the most important night of my life. Of Ethan's and my life." She gave me one last look, a look of ultimate triumph, before sweeping out to complete her preparations. As dusk fell, the lights of the main house began to glow. Soft music drifted across the lawn. The first cars began to arrive. I watched it all from behind my curtain, my heart strangely calm. There was no fear, no anxiety, only a singular focus, to reclaim the justice I was owed. Nurse Jacobs brought my dinner. I ate it slowly, deliberately. Afterwards, she brought me my nightly medication. "Time for your pills, Mrs. Vance." I took them, but as she turned to get me a fresh glass of water, I pretended to stumble, spilling the first glass. "Oh, clumsy me. Could you fetch another, please?" "Of course." She left the room for a moment. It was the opportunity one needed. I quickly spat the pills I had hidden under my tongue into a potted plant. I had no idea what they were, but I would not have my wits dulled tonight. When she returned, I drank the water and feigned drowsiness, slumping onto the bed. I feel so tired I think I'll sleep now. Yes, Mrs. Vance. You rest. She was satisfied, assuming the drugs had taken effect. She dimmed the lights and left the room. And then I heard the sound I had been waiting for. The soft click of the lock turning from the outside. I was officially a prisoner. Madison was surely smiling. But she had no idea that in locking me in, she had just handed me my freedom. I lay still, waiting, listening until I was certain the area was clear. Then slowly I rose from the bed. The dim light was no hindrance. I knew every inch of this room by heart. The music from the main house was louder now, a festive backdrop to my quiet rebellion. Madison would be in her element, the radiant hostess. Ethan would be by her side, charming the important investor, oblivious to the storm that was about to break. I wasted no more time. I went to the wardrobe and chose my finest silk dress, an elegant ivory number that Arthur had always said made me look regal. I carefully styled my silvering hair and applied a touch of lipstick. The woman in the mirror was not a frail, confused patient. She was Eleanor Vance, poised and ready. Next, the escape. The door was locked as expected. But I had a contingency plan. The small louvered window in the bathroom was high on the wall. Madison would never imagine an old woman like me attempting such a feat. She had underestimated me from the very beginning. I dragged a small wooden chair beneath the window and climbed up, my movements careful but steady. Using a bobby pin I had saved for this purpose, I patiently worked at the old latch. My heart hammered against my ribs, a counter-rhythm to the party's distant music. Finally, the latch gave way. I pushed the window open. The gap was small, but it was enough. Taking a deep breath, I maneuvered my body through the opening, lowering myself down the other side. My feet touched the cool, damp grass of the garden. I was free. I stood for a moment in the shadows of the guest house, letting my eyes adjust. I looked back at the small building. It looked like the empty cage it now was. Then I turned towards my goal. The main house where Madison's performance was reaching its crescendo. I didn't take the lit path. I moved through the shadows along the hedgerow, a route I knew by heart. Every tree, every bush was an old friend, shielding me from view. As I drew closer, the sounds of laughter and conversation grew clearer. I could see figures moving behind the sheer curtains of the grand ballroom. I saw Ethan, deep in conversation with a tall, distinguished-looking man that must be Mr. Dubois, the investor. And I saw Madison. She was a vision in a stunning crimson gown, moving through the crowd with a flawless smile, the perfect queen of her new kingdom. The sight no longer pained me. I watched her with a cold, detached calm, like a spectator watching the final scene of a tragedy. My plan was simple. I would wait for Mr. Peterson. Maria had told me he would arrive around 9 o'clock, when the party was in full swing. I found a hiding place behind a large azalea bush with a clear view of the main entrance. The minutes ticked by. I ignored the nuisance of mosquitoes, my focus absolute. Then a black town car pulled up. A distinguished older man in a dark gray suit emerged. Mr. Peterson. My heart swelled with gratitude. He walked towards the entrance, where a hostess looked momentarily confused, unable to find his name on the guest list. But before any issue could arise, Maria, who had been watching, quickly intervened. She whispered something to the hostess and then gestured for Mr. Peterson to enter. My plan was working perfectly. All the pieces were in place. It was time for my entrance. Taking one last deep breath, I stepped out of the shadows. I walked not to the main entrance, but to the large French doors that opened from the ballroom onto the side terrace. They were always left open for air. I walked through the garden I had created, the scent of night-blooming jasmine seeming to bolster my resolve. My steps were steady, my posture erect. The ivory silk of my dress shimmered in the ambient light. I paused at the threshold, looking into the glittering ballroom. It was a sea of high society, all of them captivated by the spectacle Madison had created. No one noticed the old woman standing in the shadows. From my vantage point I saw Madison, Ethan, and Mr. Dubois with his wife. Madison was speaking animatedly, captivating her audience, playing her role to perfection. Mr. Peterson stood discreetly nearby, waiting for my signal. The time was now. I stepped over the threshold and into the ballroom. I walked slowly, deliberately, not towards my son, but directly through the center of the room, where I would be impossible to miss. First, no one paid me any mind. Then one of the older guests, a man who had known our family for years, did a double take. "Is that Eleanor Vance?" His voice was just loud enough to make his neighbors turn. And so it began, a ripple spreading through the crowd. The chatter began to die down, person by person, until a hush fell over the entire room. The only sound was the classical music still playing, oblivious. Every eye was on me. Their expressions were a mixture of shock, confusion, and intense curiosity. In an instant, I had become the center of attention. Of course, my arrival did not escape the notice of the hostess. I saw Madison's head snap in my direction. The smile on her face froze, then melted into an expression of pure, unadulterated panic. Her face went white. She must have been wondering how on earth I had gotten out of a locked room. Ethan was even more stunned. His mouth hung open, his eyes wide with a terror that went beyond surprise. He was afraid of the truth he had tried so hard to bury. Mr. Dubois and the other guests looked back and forth between me, Madison, and Ethan, sensing the immense, unspoken tension. I did not stop. I continued my steady, regal procession, my eyes fixed not on my family, but on my true target, Mr. Dubois. I came to a halt directly in front of him. In my hand, I held the dark leather portfolio I had taken from the cedar chest. I offered him a polite, genuine smile. Then, in a voice that was quiet but carried through the silent room with perfect clarity, I spoke. "Good evening. My name is Eleanor Vance." I paused, letting my name and my presence register. "I am the true owner of this estate." My declaration hung in the dead air. The music had finally stopped. Madison was the first to recover, her panic morphing into a barely concealed fury. "Eleanor, what are you doing here?" she hissed, rushing towards me, trying to grab my arm and hustle me away. "You're upsetting the guests. You must be confused again. Let's get you back to your room." She used her weapon, the word confused, one last time. But tonight it had lost all its power. I moved just out of her reach, my gaze never leaving Mr. Dubois. "I am not confused, Madison," I said, addressing her formally, severing the false tie of our relationship. "On the contrary, my mind has never been clearer." Ethan, his face a mottled red and white, pleaded with his eyes. "Mom, please don't do this. We can talk about this later quietly." "This is me talking quietly, Ethan," I replied, my voice firm but not unkind. "Because for the past several months no one has been listening." I turned back to Mr. Dubois, who was watching the scene with the shrewd, analytical eyes of a seasoned businessman. He was not one to be swayed by drama, only by facts. "My apologies for this interruption, Mr. Dubois," I said respectfully. "I understand you are considering a significant business venture with my son, but as the legal owner of this property, I felt you deserved to have all the correct information." "Mother, what are you talking about? Stop this right now," Madison shrieked, her carefully constructed composure cracking completely. "Ethan, do something. Don't just stand there." But before Ethan could move, Mr. Peterson stepped forward from the edge of the crowd. He came to stand beside me, a silent, powerful endorsement. "Good evening, everyone. My name is Howard Peterson. I have been the Vance family's legal counsel for over 30 years. His introduction carried immense weight. Everyone there knew his reputation for integrity. Madison stared at him aghast. "Who invited you?" "My client did," Mr. Peterson replied calmly. "Mrs. Eleanor Vance." The final piece was in place. I slowly opened the leather portfolio and removed the old, creased document, the one with the official seal. "I believe this will clarify my position." I handed the original deed to Mr. Dubois. He took it, a puzzled expression on his face, and began to read. His brow furrowed. He looked up at me, then at Ethan and Madison. His expression hardened, shifting from curiosity to deep disappointment. This is the original deed to the property," Mr. Dubois stated, his voice flat but audible to those nearby. "And the sole proprietor is listed as Eleanor Vance." The words were a bombshell. A wave of murmurs erupted throughout the room. The picture Madison had painted of herself as the new matriarch was shattered by the simple, undeniable truth. The real matriarch was the woman she had tried to hide away. "No, that's impossible," Madison screamed, losing all control. She lunged for the deed, but Mr. Peterson intercepted her smoothly. "Please compose yourself, Mrs. Vance. There's been a mistake. This house belongs to Ethan. It's our home," she shrieked, turning on her husband. "Ethan, tell them the truth." Ethan stood like a statue carved from ice, his face drained of all color. He bowed his head, unable to meet anyone's gaze. His silence was the loudest confession of all. "It seems there has been a misunderstanding indeed," Mr. Dubois said, his voice cold as steel. He handed the deed back to Mr. Peterson and fixed Ethan and Madison with a withering glare. "I conduct my business with transparency and integrity. To be misled about something as fundamental as the ownership of your primary asset, this is a very serious matter for me." He turned to his wife. "My dear, let's go. I believe our business here is concluded." With that, Mr. Dubois and his wife turned and walked out of the party without a backward glance, leaving Madison standing in the ruins of her ambition. His departure was the final signal. The party was over. The other guests began to leave, quietly, discreetly. Some cast sympathetic glances my way. Others shook their heads in disgust at Madison's behavior. The grand ballroom, once a stage for triumph, was now a theater of shame. Madison sank to the floor, her crimson gown pooling around her. She began to sob, not with artifice, but with the raw guttural sound of total defeat. Why would you do this to me?" she wailed, looking up at me with eyes full of hate. "Why did you have to ruin my life?" I looked down at her, feeling not satisfaction, not pity, but a profound emptiness. "You ruined it yourself, Madison," I said simply. "You destroyed the trust one offered you. You destroyed your family. And you destroyed your husband's future. All for an ambition that could never be satisfied." I turned my gaze to Ethan. He was still standing there, head bowed, silent, tears streaming down his face. Then slowly, as if his bones were made of lead, he sank to his knees. He knelt on the floor before me, before the few remaining staff. "Mom, I am so sorry," he choked out, his voice thick with a guilt so profound it was painful to hear. "I am so sorry. Please forgive me." The sight of my son, my only child, kneeling before me was a blow to my heart. All the anger I had held on to dissolved, leaving only the aching love and pain of a mother. He had done a terrible thing, an unforgivable thing. But he was still my son. I didn't answer him right away. I let the silence hang in the air, a space for him to fully absorb the consequences of his weakness, to understand the price of his willful blindness. The long night was finally over. But for our family, a new story was just beginning. One of atonement and of healing. After the storm passed, a new kind of quiet settled over the Vance estate, not the silence of oppression, but the stillness of a new beginning. The caterers and guests were gone, leaving only me, Ethan, Madison, Mr. Peterson, and Maria, who watched from a distance. Madison sat on the floor. Her sobs subsided into a vacant stare. Ethan remained on his knees, his head bowed in shame, his shoulders shaking with silent crying. I finally addressed Mr. Peterson. "Thank you, Howard. I couldn't have done this without you." "It was my duty and my honor, Eleanor," he replied gently. "Arthur made me promise to always look out for you." His words were a small comfort. "From here," I said, my voice tired but firm, "I would like to handle this as a family." "I understand." He nodded. "Call me anytime, day or night, if you need anything at all." He gave me a respectful bow and departed, leaving the three of us in the wreckage of the ballroom. I looked at Madison. "Get up, Madison. The floor is cold." My voice was devoid of malice. It was simply a statement of fact. She looked up, surprised by my tone, and shakily got to her feet, her expensive gown now a ruined costume. "Go to your room," I said, my words clear and final. "Pack your things. I will give you until morning. Then you will leave this house." It was not an emotional outburst. It was a necessary amputation. This house would no longer harbor deceit. You're throwing me out," she stammered. "Yes." But what about Ethan? I'm his wife. We're not divorced. She looked to him for support, but he remained silent, his face buried in his hands. His silence was her answer. Your relationship with Ethan is for the two of you to resolve, I continued. But as the owner of this house, I will not permit you to stay here. As for your assets, your settlement, let the lawyers handle it according to the law. I will not be unfair. But you will not remain under this roof. Her last hope crumbled. She knew there was nothing left to fight for. The tears that came now were real, born of true defeat. She gave a slow, broken nod and walked, head down, from the ballroom, a soldier vanquished from the field. When she was gone, I sank onto a nearby sofa and finally spoke to my son. Get up, Ethan. Talk to me. He slowly raised his head, his eyes bloodshot and swollen. Mom, I was a monster. The worst son imaginable. I let her hurt you. I ignored you. I was a fool to believe her over my own mother. He repeated his apologies, his words tumbling out in a torrent of self-loathing. Why, Ethan? I asked, the question that had haunted me for months. Why did you let it go this far? Why didn't you trust me? He looked down again, his tears dripping onto the Persian rug. I don't know, Mom, he whispered. At first I didn't believe it, but she was in my ear every day, creating stories, planting evidence until I started to doubt. I was stressed with work, I didn't want to fight with her, I just wanted peace at home. So I chose the easiest path. I chose to look the other way. I was a coward. His confession was painful, but it was the truth. Peace that is bought with willful blindness is not peace at all, Ethan. I told him, the mother in me finding her voice. It's a time bomb, waiting to destroy everything. I know that now, Mom. I know. He crawled closer, reaching for my hand. I pulled it back. Not out of anger, but because the wound was too deep. It could not be healed with a few simple words. Stand up, I said quietly. Go and deal with your life. As for us, you and me, it will take time. I am glad you see your mistake. But trust, once it has been broken so completely, must be rebuilt. It cannot simply be given back. He nodded, understanding. He knew he had no right to ask for more. He rose slowly and gave me a deep, respectful bow. Yes, Mom. I will handle everything. He turned and walked in the direction Madison had gone, to face the conclusion of his marriage. A deep exhaustion settled over me. Maria rushed to my side. Mrs. Vance, let's get you to your room. My room? I asked, the word feeling foreign. For months I'd had a house but no room to call my own. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Your bedroom, Mrs. Vance. Your real room. She smiled through her tears. I've kept it clean for you every single day. I never let the dust settle. I always knew you would come back. Her faith was a balm on my weary soul. Thank you, Maria. Thank you. I let her support me as we walked up the grand staircase, my feet treading on familiar steps for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. The scent of the house, my house, was a fragrance I had longed for. At the door to the master suite, my room with Arthur, I paused. My hand trembled as I turned the knob. Inside, everything was pristine. The large bed, so long empty, was waiting. I walked out onto the balcony and breathed in the night air, looking out over my garden. Everything was mine again. That night, I slept in my own bed in my own home. It was the deepest, most peaceful sleep I'd had in years. The next morning, I awoke to sunlight streaming through the balcony doors. I sat up, the feeling of being truly home washing over me. It was more than a return to a place. It was a return to myself. Downstairs, the house was quiet. Maria and the staff were clearing away the last remnants of the disastrous party, their faces bright with genuine smiles as they greeted me. The pity was gone, replaced by a quiet respect for the matriarch of the house. Maria reported that Madison had been driven away in the early hours of the morning. I nodded, asking no more questions. Her chapter in this house was closed. And Ethan? I asked. He's been in his study since last night, Mrs. Vance. He hasn't come out. I knew he needed this time alone to confront his own failure. I would not rush him. The lesson had been a harsh one, and he needed to learn it on his own. In the days that followed, a new normal settled in. Ethan and I ate our meals together in a quiet that was thick with unspoken words, But it was a necessary quiet. He began to change. He stopped coming home late. He spent his weekends not at cocktail parties, but in the garden helping the staff doing work he had never done before. He didn't try to flatter me with words. Instead, his actions became his apology. He would ask Maria what I felt like eating for dinner. He would order my favorite flowers for the vases each week. Slowly, I began to open my heart to him again. Our conversation started small about the weather, about the roses, until one evening as we sat in the sunroom, he finally spoke of what had happened. "Mom, the deal with Mr. Du Bois is dead," he said, his voice flat. I called and apologized. He terminated the contract. I lost a lot of money and a lot of credibility. "And how do you feel about that?" I asked gently. He looked out at the fountain. At first I was devastated. But now he turned to meet my eyes, his own clear and steady. "Now I feel relieved. I've learned that no success is worth the cost of hurting the people you love. I almost lost you, Mom, because of my own greed and blindness. Losing that deal is nothing compared to that." Tears welled in my eyes. These were the words I had been waiting to hear. I reached out and took his hand. He squeezed it back tightly. "Give me another chance, Mom," he pleaded. "I promise I will be a better son. I will take care of you. I will never let you down again." I smiled through my tears and nodded. "I always give you a chance, Ethan. You are the most precious thing your father left me." The rift between us began to heal that day. It would always bear a scar, a reminder of the past, but we were strong enough to move forward. Weeks later, true peace had returned to the Vance estate. One afternoon, Ethan came to me in the garden with an envelope. Inside were the finalized divorce papers from Madison, and another document, his new will. He was leaving the entirety of his fortune not to a future wife or child, but to a foundation for orphan children. "Why, Ethan?" I asked, surprised. "I've thought about it, Mom," he said with a serene smile. "I have no heirs. I don't want the wealth you and Dad built to ever fall into the wrong hands again. Giving it back to the world seems like the best way to honor your legacy. It's about creating real value, not just holding on to riches." I looked at my son with immense pride. He had learned life's greatest lesson. My story began with pain and imprisonment, but it ended with freedom and healing. I had won back my home, but my true victory was winning back my son, a man reborn stronger and wiser than before. I sipped my tea, watching him as he laughed with Maria by the fountain. His smile was free, unburdened. This house was a home again. And I, Eleanor Vance, was finally the master of it, and of my own life once more.